Hey crew, just hopping on with a quick news update. A twist of events, Alex's son, Richard Alexander Murdaugh Jr., better known as Buster, filed a complaint on June 14th, 2024 against, and it's a big lawsuit, against Blackfin Incorporated, a name you might recognize because we've been covering the Renee Beach conspiracy case. And they were the ones involved with releasing a trailer that included pictures of Mallory Beach's dead body. They are the first named defendants, but there's more. Warner Brothers Discovery Inc., Warner Media Entertainment Pages Inc., Campfire Studios Inc., the Cinemart LLC, Netflix Inc., Gannett Company Incorporated, or Gannett, I'm not quite sure how that's pronounced, and Michael M. Dewitt Jr. So you're probably familiar with everyone listed in this complaint. These are some big names. And it's all about defamation for all of the insinuations and innuendos that he had something to do with the murder of Stephen Smith, and also the side point, the accusations that he had a romantic relationship with Stephen Smith. But it is interesting to see Blackfin called out again in another lawsuit. But this case is all about defamation, specifically what he calls the false allegations that the plaintiff was involved in the murder of Stephen Smith, even though the plaintiff has not been notified by any law enforcement entities of any allegations against him related to Stephen Smith's death. As a result, the plaintiff suffered damages to his reputation and mental anguish. It's a 10-page complaint that says in point 2 that Blackfin sent its agents into this state, or South Carolina, to collect information and create artistic work, derived substantial revenue from goods and services consumed in this state, entered contracts to be performed in this state, and produced goods with the reasonable explanation that they would be used or consumed in this state, all in the process of producing some of the artistic works that give rise to the cause of action described herein. Points 3 and 4 are the same language but with the defendant Warner Brothers Discovery. Points 5 and 6 the same for Warner Media Entertainment Pages. 7 and 8, Campfire Studios, 9 and 10, Cinemart LLC, and these are all just saying what they're being accused of doing and why this is the proper jurisdiction for them to file this case. Netflix is 11 and 12, Gannett Corporation Inc. is 13 and 14. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, and I had not heard of them, but they publish the Hampton County Guardian and other local and regional news sources within the state of South Carolina. And the last defendant, Michael Dewitt Jr., is a resident of Hampton County and the editor of the weekly newspaper, the Hampton County Guardian. And it's in his role as editor that he's considered an agent of the defendant Gannett, or Gannett. I'm really not sure how to pronounce that. And now we get to the details. Point 18. On July 8, 2015, Stephen Smith, whose car had given out of gas, was walking along a rural road in Hampton County, South Carolina. It was late at night. As he was walking along the road, he was allegedly struck by a part of a vehicle and killed. News sources now report his death as being considered by a statewide grand jury, and the media has reported on individuals unrelated to plaintiff allegedly being involved in his death. The plaintiff, even though he has been falsely accused of harming Stephen Smith as described below, has not been notified by any law enforcement entities of any allegations against him related to Stephen Smith's death. Point 19. On or about June 17, 2022, defendant Warner Brothers Discovery Inc. began streaming and broadcasting a series, Murdaugh Murders, Deadly Dynasty, throughout the entire country, including South Carolina, through its platform Discovery Plus and the Investigation Discovery television channel, which falsely suggests and subtly accuses the plaintiff of being the murderer of Stephen Smith. During a 10-minute segment of the Murdaugh Murders Deadly Dynasty series, the plaintiff is alluded to a number of times as the murderer of Stephen Smith. Point 20. These statements about the plaintiff are defamatory and falsely accuse the plaintiff of committing a crime of moral turpitude. The false statements have been published to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers who watch the show, including viewers in South Carolina. And the defamatory statements continue to be republished as of the filing of this action on a broad array of streaming platforms and channels owned by defendant Warner Brothers. Defendant Warner Brothers Discovery Inc. has hundreds of thousands of subscribers to its Discovery Plus Investigation Discovery and other streaming and broadcasting services and channels within South Carolina, was aware of the acute regional interest in the series and intended for South Carolina viewers to watch Murdaugh Murders Deadly Dynasty. Defendant Warner Bros. Discovery Inc. purposefully and specifically directed marketing and advertising efforts for the series to South Carolina citizens. Point 21, Defendant Blackfin Inc. created and produced the series Murdaugh Murders Deadly Dynasty, and in doing so, published the above-described defamatory statements concerning Plaintiff, and profited from Defendant Warner Bros. Discovery Inc.'s republishing of the statements. In creating and producing the series, Defendant Blackfin Inc. engaged in persistent series development, investigation, and filming activities within this state to create an artistic work that would have specific appeal to viewers within this state and would be consumed by viewers within this state. Point 22, beginning on November 3rd, 2022, the defendants, Warner Bros. Discovery Inc. and Warner Media Entertainment Pages Inc. began distributing and streaming a 3-part series to the public on the Murdaugh family entitled Low Country, The Murdaugh Dynasty, through defendant Warner Bros. Inc.'s platform HBO Max, now entitled Max, throughout the entire country and specifically within this state. The series publishes false statements that suggest the plaintiff, along with others, murdered Stephen Smith by striking him with a baseball bat. A sequence in the show accuses the plaintiff of killing Stephen Smith because of his sexual identity and further insinuates that the plaintiff killed Stephen Smith in relation to a romantic relationship between plaintiff and Smith. These statements are untrue in their entirety. These statements are defamatory in that they falsely accuse the plaintiff of committing murder. The false statements have been published to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers who watch the show, including viewers in South Carolina, and the defamatory statements continue to be republished as of the filing of this action across a broad array of streaming platforms and channels owned by defendant Warner Bros. Discovery Inc. Defendant Campfire Studios, Inc. created and produced the series Low Country, The Murdaugh Dynasty, and in doing so, published the above-described defamatory statements concerning plaintiff and profited from defendant Warner Bros. Discovery Inc.'s republishing of the statements. In creating and producing the series, Campfire Studios, Inc. engaged in persistent series development, investigation, and filming activities within this state to create an artistic work that would have specific appeal to viewers within this state and would be consumed by viewers within this state. On February 22, 2023, defendant Netflix Inc. began streaming a series entitled Murdaugh Murders, A Southern Scandal, which depicts a young man with red hair carrying a baseball bat. The plaintiff has red hair, and it is readily ascertainable from the content of the series that the creators were depicting the plaintiff as the murderer of Stephen Smith. The series publishes statements such as, "Everyone keeps coming up to me and saying it was the Murdaugh boys." And listening to these statements, it is pretty clear Stephen's death is intertwined with the Murdaughs. The series falsely contained statements that the plaintiff was engaged in a romantic relationship with Stephen Smith, and that it was plaintiff and maybe 2 other individuals who killed Stephen Smith. These statements are defamatory in that they falsely accuse the plaintiff of committing murder. The false statements were published to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers who watched the show, including viewers in South Carolina, and the defamatory statements continue to be republished by defendant Netflix Inc. as of the filing of this action. Defendant Netflix Inc. has hundreds of thousands of subscribers within South Carolina, was aware of the acute regional interest in the series, and intended for South Carolina viewers to watch Murdaugh Murders Deadly Dynasty. Defendant Netflix Inc. purposefully and specifically directed marketing and advertising efforts for the series to South Carolina citizens. Defendant The Cinemart LLC created and produced the series Murdaugh Murders, A Southern Scandal, and in doing so published the above-described defamatory statements concerning plaintiff and prohibited from defendant Netflix Inc.'s republishing of the statements. In creating and producing the series, the Cinemart LLC engaged in persistent series development, investigation, and filming activities within the state to create an artistic work that would have specific appeal to viewers within this state and would be consumed by viewers within this state. Now we go to point 28, which is about Michael Dewitt Jr., the editor of the Hampton County Guardian, a local weekly newspaper covering Hampton County. Mr. Dewitt appeared in the Netflix series Murdaugh Murders, A Southern Scandal, in both his individual capacity and within the scope and course of his agency as editor of the Hampton County Guardian. In the documentary, he states, "We were hearing all of these rumors about a possible connection. There is some truth to it." Now that's the troubling point right there. Saying you're hearing rumors is kind of stating a fact. There were rumors, but stating there is some truth to it is where he could be in some trouble. We could not put the Murdaugh name in the story unless we wanted to face lawsuits. We said a prominent, well-known family was rumored to be involved. Everyone knew who we were talking about. That's kind of admitting right there. We published the story and we waited. People would come up to me in the Piggly Wiggly and pat me on the back. For those of you not familiar with the South, Piggly Wiggly is a grocery store chain that runs throughout the South. We're so thankful you had the courage to run the story. We did everything but put the Murdaugh name in the story. And I began to have a bad taste in my mouth about the members of the Murdaugh family, as many people in the community did. Those are troublesome. When put in context with the remainder of the documentary, it is clear that Mr. Dewitt is falsely accusing the plaintiff of being involved in the murder of Stephen Smith. Mr. Dewitt's false statements defamed the plaintiff and damaged his reputation. Defendant's publications are unprivileged or exceed the scope of any privilege recognized by South Carolina and/or federal law. The statements were made with reckless indifference to the truth. In publishing these statements, defendants purposefully ignored information demonstrating their falsity that was readily available to and within the defendant's knowledge, including information indicating that individuals unrelated to plaintiff were responsible for Mr. Smith's death. Defendants' publications and republications of the defamatory statements are unfair and biased in that defendants deliberately chose to omit from the series information contradicting the above-described defamatory statements. All of the above-described statements were defamatory and falsely accused the plaintiff of being involved in the murder of Stephen Smith. As a result of the specific false and defamatory statements made by defendants and republished by defendants, the plaintiff's reputation has been irreparably damaged, and he has suffered mental anguish. Plaintiff is entitled to actual damages and punitive damages because of the reckless conduct of the defendants in falsely accusing him of being involved in the murder of Stephen Smith. Wherefore plaintiff prays for actual damages, punitive damage, and the costs of this action. As we've mentioned before here, the defendants have 30 days to file an answer. This will be very, very exciting to see. Personally, I have always steered clear of the Stephen Smith case just because there were a lot of accusations thrown out that did turn into dead ends. They turned out to be a lot of gossip and rumor that could never be officially tracked down or supported with any kind of evidence. Buster has enough on his plate without walking around being accused of something that has not been proven. This case is not filed by Dick and Jim. It has been filed by the Kent Law Firm, specifically by Sean Courtney Kent, out of Manning, South Carolina. And of course, I'll be watching for any new updates on this case to keep you informed, as always. This is Cassidy O'Connell, saying stay well and stay tuned.